Nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Well, we'll give it another minute and then we'll get started. People keep on trickling in, so. Okay.
Boris, you got long hair, man.
Boris chose to do that during COVID.
Yeah,
Grow his hair out,
I
man.
can see that.
Let his hair down. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, we appreciate everyone logging on. Kind of a little bit of a format. So if you're not speaking, we ask you to put your microphone on mute. Of course, if you have something to say, I'm sure you're more than welcome to share it, obviously. On the right-hand side of your screen, at least on mine anyway, there's a chat forum. So if you're not, if you have a question you want to post up there, you're more than welcome to do that. Harry, we really appreciate your time this evening, and we're happy to have you. I've heard you a few times in presentations. I know you give them at all different locations, and we're looking forward to what you have to say, and we probably have some questions for you as well. You want to go ahead and take the time, and we'll just get started, jump right into it?
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
Let's just get rolling.
Sure.
We're ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, great. First of all, thanks for inviting me. It's really no big deal. I'm right here in Fort Myers. I'm in my office, so it's a piece of cake. But thanks for having me talk to you today. Some of you have been to some of these presentations before. We've probably done about 25 of them since all this chaos began, and I know a lot of you are pretty zoomed out about the whole thing. But it's a super important topic, and I'm glad that you're taking the time to learn about it. I work for a lot of people, and I would say the vast majority of people do not know what's going on. They don't understand any of this, and there's going to be a lot of mistakes that are going to be made, but they're all avoidable mistakes. So that's kind of what I'm all about. If anybody knows about me, I don't like fixing mistakes. I don't like cleaning up messes. I'm all about avoiding stuff. I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't really need to do it anymore. I like keeping people out of trouble, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Tonight's not just going to be about evictions. In fact, that's actually a smaller part of the whole thing. It's more really the topic tonight is dealing with delinquencies and eviction avoidance techniques. And then in the worst case scenario, we're going to deal with evictions. But there's going to be a lot tonight that's going to be covering different topics. Evictions, that's kind of the easy part of it. The word eviction's bad right now, as you all know. It's like the word foreclosure back in 2008. Where we're all being targeted as being evil landlords right now. I'm a landlord myself. And so we got to make sure we do everything right. That's the key. And I'm all about doing things right. I'm not into taking shortcuts. I'm not into doing anything where you guys are going to get yourself in trouble. There's things that you can do and you could get in trouble. For example, right now, you could go ahead and serve 3-day notices. You could go to the courthouse and file evictions right now for non-payment of rent. It's completely 100% illegal, but the clerk's office is not going to stop you. And thousands of cases have actually been filed in Florida, and we're not sure what's going to happen with that. Attorneys are already jumping onto that whole mess. So we're really concerned about that. Then we've got the CARES Act, and we're going to talk about the CARES Act at the very end, because most of you, from what I heard, is most of you are not covered under the CARES Act. You either have your properties paid off or your financing is not connected to the federal government. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper. If you don't know about the CARES Act and how bizarre that all is, then you really need help. You've got to learn about this. It's crucial that you learn about it right now because it impacts every single thing that you do right now, from notices, what you can charge, whether you could evict, all that stuff. I always talk about some good news. The good news is leasing activity is high. the amount of people, the delinquency rate is actually very low amongst people who know what they're doing, people who screen properly and people who are generally advanced. And if I slip up tonight and say property managers, you know that 95% of the people that I work for are property managers. So I'm always used to talking to property managers. Whereas I know a lot of you, well, most of you, if not all of you, are investors yourself. So you have your own property. So if you hear me say property manager, just don't worry about that. Just think about you, because you're whether you own it or not, you're managing the property anyway. The numbers were great for April. The numbers were really good for May. The numbers for June are really good for the people who know what they're doing. And it just goes to show that if you know what you're doing, if you properly screen people and you do things correctly, this whole mess has not really impacted you as much as it has impacted the people who are clueless. So it really goes to show that knowing what you're doing really pays off. One thing, though, we have to be really careful about right now is that this whole eviction, bad word, has spawned off those attorneys who are now jumping into the action, and they are going to represent tenants. And we have to be really cautious of this. We're going to be watched. We're going to be watched more carefully than ever before. The judges are going to look at things more carefully. You know, in the past, you could file anything. And if the tenant doesn't put the money in the court registry and the judge doesn't look at it, you're going to get your final judgment. It's going to be different right now. Things are going to be looked at real carefully by these outside attorneys and also by legal aid, of course. We have to be concerned about potential penalties, potential violations of the CARES Act, potential violation of the executive order. We have to think about all that stuff right now. And the main thing is you're going to follow all this stuff, and your goal is to avoid evictions. And so if you could avoid an eviction, avoid having to go to court, then you don't have to worry about a thing. And when you know what you're doing, you really can avoid evictions if you really work at it. And a lot of you have worked so hard to get your properties, but oftentimes you run to an eviction quicker than you should. And you probably, if you did certain things, you probably can get the result that you wanted without ever needing an eviction. There's a real big fallacy. Some of you know this. You guys are pretty advanced. I know that for a fact. Some of you know this, but some of you don't. Under Florida law, the winner in an eviction action, in a landlord-tenant case, the winner gets an award of attorney's fees. Now you're thinking, well, usually when you file an eviction, you win. But what good does that do you? So you win, let's say you filed it with an attorney, you won, and you get a judgment against the tenant for attorney's fees. Big deal. They're not going to pay in most cases. But if somebody gets an eviction bounced out of court, if any of you have experience filing one, having it thrown out of court with an attorney involved, that attorney could go after attorney's fees. And we have to be really scared about this. I know an attorney who routinely gets anywhere between $10,000. He's got one for $37,000 to bounce an eviction out of court. And these guys know this. They know that the law, as far as landlord-tenant law, the prevailing party for attorney's fees law, these attorneys are taking these cases for free. So they take your tenant, they're taking their cases for free. They're getting them from legal aid. Some lawyers are actually going to the courthouse and looking up the people who are being evicted, sending them a letter stating that they'll represent them for free. So they're farming right now. They're farming for these cases. It's really bad. And real quick before I go on, I want to mention two things that's been happening over the past year, but just recently, really super high. If any of you have websites, where you advertise your properties, you have got to follow the laws now that are for the Americans with Disabilities Act and websites. Just this week, 5 people that I know have been hit with this lawsuit. It's actually a pre-lawsuit by an attorney out of Washington, D.C., and they're going after you guys for for violation of the ADA, for not making your website accessible to people with disabilities. You got to watch out for that one. The other one, this is a bad one too, and we had a couple of these last week. People are calling you up. They're testers. They're calling you up and they're asking a simple question. They're making believe that they're looking for a place to live, and they're saying things like, "Do you accept people with felonies?" Or I've got a couple felonies. Could you tell me what the deal is? And if you slip up and say the wrong thing, you are going to get sued. And I'm dealing with this right now. We don't take those cases either. We have to farm them out to other people because they're too complicated for us. They end up settling for between $2,000 and $10,000, but you do not want that to happen to you. So if you don't even know what I'm talking about right now, dive in and learn, and maybe get another speaker for something like that, because those are two huge topics right now. And a lot of people don't understand that you can't have a blanket denial of felonies. You can't be safe now doing a 5-year if you don't have a felony within 5 years, you're okay, or you can't do that. There's no blanket anything anymore. It's really bad. Okay, today, everything that I'm going to talk about today applies to residential properties. And the executive order that we're under right now applies to every single residential property, every single one of them. Doesn't matter if they're CARES covered or not CARES covered, it applies to everybody. And it says no evictions for non-payment of rent until the executive order is over, and that's on July 1st. So no notices for non-payment of rent, no evictions for non-payment of rent are to be filed according to the executive order until July 1st or July 2nd. So it's going to be way safer to think of July 2nd as your date. So it's pretty simple. You can't give any notices right now for non-payment of rent. Now you notice I stressed non-payment of rent. I didn't say non-compliances, and I didn't say non-renewals. You still could give notices for non-renewals and non-compliances. That's not impacted by the executive order. The executive order is about non-payment of rent, period. And a lot of people are confused about that. They thought, oh, we can't file an eviction until the executive order is over. And, it was first May 17th, then it got extended to June, now it got extended to July. I don't think it's going to be extended again, but you never know. The executive order is targeted at non-payment of rent situations. It doesn't prohibit the other things, like I said, non-renewals or non-compliance evictions. Now, we got another thing to worry about, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has a hold on the writ of possession. They're stating no writs of possession can be executed, can be issued actually, no writs of possession, and that doesn't end until the end of the month. So we've got that going against us right now. So even if you were to file an eviction and get all the way to the bitter end, nothing's going to happen because the Supreme Court. You might have heard May 29th. But that was just extended, and I'm not blanking out a little bit, but I think it is June 30th. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. It's either June 30th or July 1st. It's kind of coinciding with the executive order. So by now, every one of you should have confirmed whether your property is covered under CARES or not covered under CARES. And if you haven't confirmed, or if you don't know what I mean, then you got to know. You have to find out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to find out whether you are CARES covered or you're not CARES covered. Now, if you have no mortgage, your place is paid off, you have a private mortgage with somebody, or your bank has you've got a mortgage with a local bank. A lot of you have established relationships with smaller banks, and you've checked with your bank, and you checked, and it's not Fannie Mae, it's not Freddie Mac, it's not Section 8 or anything like that. It's not you're not taking a voucher. Then it's not covered. It's not covered. And that's what we're going to focus on right now. Non-covered properties. No financing, no nothing's connected to the federal government in any way, shape, or form. And some of you thought you weren't covered. Then when you start digging deeper, you found out that you were. Now, some of you do manage properties for other people. If that's the case, you're going to check with your owner before you do anything, and you're going to find out. But for the most part, it's going to be your property, and you're going to know that you have a mortgage, but you won't necessarily know whether it's covered or not. Do not assume that you're not covered. In fact, assume that you are covered if you have a mortgage, and then back it up from there, kind of reverse from there. So assume the worst and hope for the best, and most likely you're not going to be covered, but you might be. When you file an eviction, when the time comes when you could file evictions, the courts are most likely going to want proof. There's four courthouses already that are requiring an affidavit to be filled out. Each one is different, which is ridiculous, but each one is different from the court, and it states that the property is not covered under CARES. We have our own affidavit. If Lee County doesn't have one, and Collier County doesn't have one, Charlotte County doesn't have one, if they don't, we're gonna file our own affidavit stating that the property is not covered under CARES. So you need to know this, and if you're gonna file your own eviction, see, a lot of you file your own evictions, and that's kind of why you don't see me at your meetings. I know that you're do-it-yourselfers to the core, and I don't work for do-it-yourselfers for the most part. I work for property managers who have us do it. but I know that you do it yourself. If you do it yourself, you're welcome to every one of my forums and notices and everything. And that affidavit we have, if Lee County or Collier or Charlotte doesn't require a special one, you feel free to use the one that we have. And when you file your eviction, because you want to let the judge know my property's not covered, just so that right off the bat, there's no question. So that's a neat little thing that you that we'll send to you. And this is what I'm going to do after the class. I'm going to send over a Dropbox folder with a bunch of stuff in it, just tons of good stuff, forms, notices, payment plans, links, all kinds of stuff. And then you guys could distribute it amongst all your members. So here we go. Here we go. What can you do right now? You can't serve notices for non-payment of rent until after July 1st. That's all. Real simple. You can, though, serve a reminder notice. What's a reminder? A reminder tells them, hey, this is what you owe. And we're firmly in favor of you sending a reminder notice. And you can go on our website and pull that reminder notice right off. Just download it and send that reminder notice. Don't just sit back and don't do anything. You can't, by law, you're not allowed to threaten an eviction. You can't do that. You can't threaten an eviction, so you really can't give a 3-day notice. But you can give a reminder notice. So every one of you should be doing that right now. If you have a delinquency, you're going to do that reminder notice. Communication is crucial. When you look around and you see who's successful in this business, they're the ones who communicate with their tenants. If you don't communicate, you've already lost. You've already failed. So out of sight, out of mind is the absolute worst. I file evictions all day long for property managers that don't communicate. And I'm like, hey, you want to give me more money? Fine, I'll take it all day long. And I think to myself, if they only checked, I file evictions sometimes where the tenant's already out, but the landlord didn't know that the tenant was already out because there's zero communication. Or I'll file evictions on a Friday and they move out over the weekend. Well, if you would have just waited 2 more days, then it wouldn't happen, but there's no lines of communication. So keep that communication open with any of your tenants who are in a situation where you are, where there's any kind of delinquency or any problem. Think about what's been going on. Over the past 3 months, some of you have been unlucky enough to have people just flat out not pay rent for 3 months. Very few, but some of you are in that boat right now. Once we get to the point where we're going to file an eviction, or you're going to file this eviction, you got to be careful because you're going to all of a sudden, after 3 months of like working with the tenant, now you're going to slam them with an eviction. So there's things that we're going to do, and I'm going to talk about how to prep. It's all about prepping yourself for if you have to actually file. A huge thing right now, and I'm shocked, absolutely shocked, how many of my clients do not know this. There are billions of dollars that have been given to the state of Florida and to the counties and the cities, billions for rent assistance. It's there. It's a massive amount of money. To give you an example, in Hillsborough County alone got $236 million. I have no idea how much Lee or Collier got, but you have a big job to do right now. If you've got a delinquency, or you might have a delinquency in July, or maybe they didn't pay rent for June, don't rest on your laurels because everything's cool right now. You don't know what's going to happen if you've got some people who didn't pay this month, or if you've got some people who don't pay in July. Every one of you should be digging around right now and finding out where this money is. I don't have a list of all these things because I work all over Florida, so I just can't do it. But you need to contact the county. You need to contact legal aid. You need to contact all the different organizations because the money's there. It's shocking how much money is there. So do that right now. Now, when you find out where this money is, don't just rely upon your tenant to find this money. You want to find this money. So you're going to find this money. Tell your tenant, hey, go down to here, go here, go. And they're going to pick up what's called these forms, social services forms. Some of you know what I'm talking about. So they're going to come back to you and they're going to want you to sign, and you'll have to sign these social services forms. Read them carefully. Make sure you're not tying your hands, because sometimes you'll sign a social services form not realizing that the money has run out, or the money never comes to you, but you might tie your hands for another month of an eviction. So you want to be careful. I have a video on that, on social services forms dangers, and you want to watch that video and learn how to deal with these social services forms, because there are record numbers of them right now. And the smart people that I work for, They are affirmatively looking for this money, telling their tenants where this money is. Their tenants are going there, and the money is starting to flow. So don't underestimate how much money is out there. It's not over yet. It's just beginning. Massive amounts of money. And your job is to find that money and be prepared. And maybe as a group, you can all create a list that you could send around so that everybody will have kind of a running list of where the money is and who to contact. There's all kinds of bizarre things out there. There's money for restaurant workers. There's money for bartenders. It's when you look at it, I could show you a list from the Bay Area Apartment Association, and it's shocking how much there is and how many things, obscure things that most of you never even heard of, but there it is. And the money, and they're being funded right now. So go for it. Get that money. The next thing, payment plans. Some of you have just kind of thrown up your arms and you told your tenant, hey, just give me what you can. And they gave you a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And that's dangerous because it sets up this little pattern. You know how partial payments are always dangerous, but this little bit here and there, that creates a problem when you finally have to clamp down. So we have to watch out for that. Use the proper forms. I have them all on the website. When you go to the website, evict.com, it's all free. Every single thing is free. The notices are free. The videos are free. It's free. There's no gimmick or catch or anything. Go to the website, go to the top part, the little red bar, click that red bar. That brings you into the whole different world of COVID-19. And there you're going to see the videos, the forums, the notices, the payment plans, and just download them all. Just download them and then fiddle with them yourself. They're all Word documents, so you could do whatever you want with those documents. But you need to use, if you're going to use payment plans, you got to use the right form. No verbal agreements. Don't be sloppy with that. I'll do what you can, and then they'll do what they can, because when it comes time to actually have to do something, that's going to come back and hurt you. So you have all that stuff available to you. If you're not tapping into it, hundreds of forums and notices. If you're not tapping into it, you're losing out. So now what we need to do is when we do a payment plan, we're going to prepare it right. You're going to make sure that it's signed by everybody, not just one person. It's going to be signed by both people to kind of treat it like a lease. When you're doing your lease, you want to make sure that your lease is signed by all the parties. Because if it's only signed, I'm dealing with one today where it's only signed by one party and the tenant wants to get out of it, the owner wants to enforce it, and who do you think wins? The tenant, right? So you want to make sure that whenever you use a payment or a payment arrangement, a payment form, wherever it might be, make sure it's signed by everybody. Don't fall for the, my wife is at work right now, so I'll sign my name right now and she'll come in tomorrow. She doesn't come in tomorrow. And now you're sitting there thinking you have a payment plan, but it's only signed by one person, and it could end up being useless. Another way to get some money. Security deposits and last month's rent. Some of you have collected security deposits and last month's rent. Most of you have a security deposit that you've collected. Some of you are lucky and you've collected the last month's rent. Can you use that right now? If your tenant's in the hole really bad, and if you really would like to have this money right now, can you touch the security deposit or the last month's rent? Well, the answer is no, not normally. But if the tenant agrees to it, then the answer is yes. You could use that money. And we have the form for that. It allows you to tap right into the security deposit, right into the last month's rent, and use it right now. Is it recommended? Is it a great idea? No. But if you need the money and the tenant's got no money, it works out really good. And it can be combined with another form, which I'm going to get to, called the agreement to vacate. So you've got some options out there. And some people just don't see those options. They're just thinking in their minds, the tenant hasn't paid the rent. I can't file an eviction right now. I'm screwed until July 1st. That's not really the case. There are options. And it's up to you whether you want to tap into these options and do these things. So you have that option of using a security deposit and using the last month's rent if you want to, and the tenant agrees to. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I still have so many clients that say, oh, we can't use the security deposit for rent. Excuse me? The security deposit is for any monies that are owed to you. Any money. When the tenant leaves and you do your claim letter, if they owe you rent, you can take it from the rent. But we're so drilled into telling the tenant, you can't use your security deposit for rent. We always tell it to the tenant, right? But if everybody agrees to it, then you can. Another thing, cash for keys. Man, some of the smartest people that I work for, and they don't realize that sometimes for $1,000, they can get somebody out of the house. We deal with it. Some of you buy houses where there's a squatter in there, and you all know you really technically can't evict a squatter. What do you have to file? An unlawful detainer. Sometimes you even have to file an ejectment action in some cases. A lot of investors, they buy houses all the time where they buy the house and from on the courthouse steps, they buy it from somebody else, and I have one today. They go in there and there's somebody living in there right now. Had one where a person died, there's somebody living, there's the tenant died, there's somebody living in there right now. What do you think I told them? I told them, try cash for keys. Now I could tell them, oh, you know, well, let's serve this notice and that notice, and we'll do this and that. We'll file an eviction. What's smarter? Throw somebody $1,000 and get them out, or have to go through the whole process, especially now that the process is going to be pretty darn messed up and it's not going to be as fast as it usually is. Lee County, Collier County, Charlotte County, it's fast. It's super fast. We got it made here. It's very fast. Other counties, it's a lot slower. But now with this, how long is it? We have no idea how long things are going to be. We have no clue, absolutely no clue. So cash for keys is an option, but you got to use the right form and do it right. And when I say cash, I don't necessarily mean cash. It could be a check. It could be where you're paying it into an account or whatever, but you're going to do it right. Read the article we have on it. Watch the video we have on it, because you don't want to get burned doing that. And I've seen people get burned. You know, you got in this business, you can't believe anybody. You have to really be cynical, and you can't trust anybody. I was on Facebook Talk. Somebody was talking about trust and faith and blah, blah, blah. If you've been doing this for any length of time, you know that doesn't work. If anything, don't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody to do what they're supposed to do. You can just kind of count on a lot of people not doing what they're supposed to do and prepare accordingly. That's the beauty of it. You know how to prepare. Don't trust people, but prepare accordingly. The next form that's beautiful. I love this form, and it actually costs me money because I don't file the eviction when you use this form. The agreement to vacate. This form is amazing. It's so simple, it's so silly, but it's where the tenant just simply states on the form, they sign the form, and they agree to vacate at a fixed date. If you've got a tenant right now who's a month in the hole or 2 months in the hole, and they're not paying the rent right now, do you think that everybody wants to be evicted? Do you think most tenants want to be evicted? Even the ones that are pretty broke, or then you got the ones who do actually have the money and are just kind of using the system right now. Do they really want to be evicted? No, most people do not. Because what does it do? It really messes up their record for a long, long, long time. It's going to sit on there. Nothing sits longer than an eviction. It just sits there on their record that they had an eviction filed or an eviction went all the way through. So one of the best things that you can do, if you've got a tenant sitting there right now, you've tried the other things I just mentioned. They went to socials. They tried to get some rent assistance. That didn't work out. Maybe you offered cash for keys. Whatever didn't work out. Think about that agreement to vacate. You just say, look, if you leave in a week, we won't file an eviction. Now they then come back to you and they say, well, I can't leave in a week. And then you come back and what do you say? Well, when can you leave? And they might say, well, I could leave at the end of June. And you say, okay, so you could leave at the end of June. If you leave at the end of June, we will not file an eviction on you. Sign here on the dotted line. It's great. Now, does it say that they just got everything for free? Does it forgive any rent or anything? No. If you look at the form, it clearly states on there that this form does not address any monies that are owed. It's simply saying, the tenant's saying, I will leave on this date. Now, interestingly, most people will leave on that date. Most people will. It's shocking how many people will. Some of the worst people, the people who have said, it's going to take you 6 months to evict me. I'm not moving. I'm not doing this. When you present this to them and they think about it, and what you could do, you could actually give it to them and give them a deadline. Just say, hey, look, you don't have to sign this right now. Think about it. And I got a video on the agreement to vacate. All those videos are on evicttv.com. Go there and look at all these videos. There's over 200 of them. And you can see how that works. You give it to them, say, look, think about it. Think about it. And if you decide to take me up on my offer, sign it and get it back to me. Email it back to me, take a picture of it, whatever, just get it back to me. And then, like I said, most of the people do leave when they say they're going to leave. And if they don't, what do I need to prove? I don't need to prove a darn thing. All I need to prove is that they're still there. And that's why we're filing the eviction. But most of the time, it doesn't even happen. It's great. They can't come back with any defenses. They can't, because you're not arguing about money anymore. It's just they signed an agreement to leave and they didn't. It works out really, really well. Rock solid. I never had any problems with the agreement to vacate when I actually had to file an eviction, which is so rare. People don't want evictions. Now we're to the point where you've tried everything and it didn't work. Now you have to file an eviction. The typical eviction is not filed by a lawyer. The typical eviction is filed by investors like you and landlords like you. The majority of the evictions that are filed are actually pro se evictions that are not done using an attorney. The judges see them all day long. Now, what sets you apart from the guy on the street with one house is the guy on the street with one house. He tries to do this himself and he messes it up really bad. He doesn't even know what a 3-day notice is. That's why I don't like to work for people unless they know what they're doing. I don't want the guy off the street. No, they even offer to pay me a lot more. I don't want them. I can't deal with it. But so what they do, they grab a form that they find somewhere on the internet and they fill it out and they put all kinds of crazy numbers and dates on there. And the judges see this garbage all the time. And the judges have to look at the garbage. When you do your paperwork right, when you do it neatly, and the judge looks at the notice and looks at the lease, because sometimes that's all they're going to look at if they're going to look at anything, that's going to help you move your case faster. Think about it. If you were a judge, you get a pile of papers and these will look all nice and neat and these look like a mess. What are you going to do first? If you were me, I like the easy stuff. So I'm going to take all the easy ones and I'm going to go through them. Sign. So there I go. I just got 20 final judgments signed. And then now I'm going to go work through this other mess. And if you think that judges don't do that, you're wrong. They do. They're just like anybody else. They're going to respect the stuff that's nice and neat and done correctly. They see messes all day long. How do we set yourself up though for this eviction? What is like some setup things that we need to do? First of all, expectations. What is your tenant's expectation? Here you had a tenant who's been sitting there for 2-3 months and they might be expecting that this is going to go on forever. You know how people are crazy like that. So they're expecting that this is going to go on forever. Your expectation is you've got a free ride for 2-3 months. It's over. So now you have a little clash of expectations. And there, as I said earlier, the tenant had been paying a little bit here, a little bit there. And so they're not expecting you to clamp down on them. Ask a few questions. Make yourself a little checklist. I'm going to do a little video on this one, probably Friday, and I'll put it on the website. And it's just kind of like preparing for an eviction. You're going to say, did we do any kind of payment plan with the tenant? Did we sign any social services form? Because remember, they run into your office and you sign it. Oftentimes, property managers and landlords, they sign it and they give it back to the person. They don't keep a copy. Don't ever do that. Because they'll run in and say, could you please sign this? And you're thinking, sure, I want to get the money. And you sign it right away. Don't do that. If you're going to sign it, read it, make a copy of it, and then give it back to the person. So you're going to ask yourself, did I make any agreements with my tenant? Did I make any payment plans? Do I have any verbal agreements? Did I sign any social services forms? If you've done any non-payment of rent, a lot of people have served 3-day notices in the past month, 2 months, 3 months, even though they weren't supposed to. If you did, don't worry about it. You're probably not going to get in trouble, but don't rely upon that one if you're going to proceed on an eviction. Do a new one. Very, very important. And I'm going to do another video on the notice to try to make a decision. On July 1st, are you going to do a 3-day notice on July 1st for June's rent and May's rent and April's rent? Or are you going to maybe wait until July 6th when your late charge kicks in or whatever your lease says? Maybe you're going to wait till July 6th so you can throw July's rent on there. I always like as much rent as possible on the notice, because that means it's going to be much harder for them to get out. Now, a lot of you are used to the fact that most of the judges require the money to be put into the court registry. So if the tenant fights the case, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to put the money into the court registry. They don't always do that, right? Some of you have been to court and you're like, what's going on here? I don't understand. The tenant never put the money in the court registry, but the judge set it for a hearing anyway. Well, we expect that's going to be quite often. We expect a lot more hearings. It stinks. A lot of times you can do them by phone. That makes it easy, but it's going to back things up. So we have to be prepared for more hearings. We have to be prepared for the judges not enforcing Florida statutes that requires a tenant to put the money into the court registry in order to fight an eviction case. Now let's talk about your non-payment of rent notice. What's the standard notice? The 3-day. But it's not always the 3-day. Some of you, and you've gotten away with this for years, just because you get away with something, do not let that lull you into a sense that everything's going to be fine. A 3-day is for a normal situation where you and the tenant are in the same county. You serve the notice. The tenant pays a physical address. That's use a 3-day notice. If your tenant's mailing you the rent, you're not supposed to use a 3-day notice. You're supposed to use an 8-day notice. A lot of you say, all right, I never heard of an 8-day notice. You never heard of it and you got lucky. You've been doing a 3-day and the judge never caught up on it. But now that you're going to be on under the microscope, do it right. I got a video on what notice to use: 3-day notice, 8-day notice, 13-day notice, 15-day. Just dive into that, because some of you don't rely upon everything that you've done for the past 10, 15, 20 years. Don't. Just say, I got to make sure that I'm doing it right this time. So you're going to fill out your 3-day. What are you going to do? Make sure that the names are proper. Look at the lease. Look at the 3-day. Put everybody's names. Some of you do these shortcuts where you'll say just John Smith and all occupants. No, everybody's on there. Everybody that's on the lease is on the 3-day notice as well. And there's one of the craziest things that has been spread in the real estate investors groups. See, real estate investors groups, sometimes you come up with these novel things to do, and they're not necessarily legal, but you do them and you get away with them. And sometimes somebody will come up with this like novel thing and it spreads through the whole group, because they go around, people give seminars and stuff, or you'll read something, or you'll go to some class. And some of you make this mistake where some of you have heard this. Some of you have heard this myth that just put one person on the lease. Just put one person on the lease. The other people are just occupants. It'll make it easier. Trust me on this. That is wrong. Yeah, when you file the eviction, you're going to save the money for serving the person, but it really can blow things up. You never want to do that. Everybody on the lease that lives there, they signed the lease. Occupant, of course, minors and things like that's a different story. But everybody, husband, wife, roommates, everybody. And then when you do your 3-day, everybody's on that as well. The amount. Let's talk about this. The amount. You're going to go back and carefully look at what's owed. But now, what about the late charges? Everybody loves late charges. People love those late charges. And we have to be concerned about these late charges now, because if you were to go back, if you've got somebody who's been delinquent for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and start calculating those late charges, you're going to be off the charts, aren't you? We are recommending to every single one of our clients, and to you, even if you do your own eviction, don't put the late charges on there. Don't do it. Wait until the eviction moratorium is over, and wait until, just forget those June. If you've got June owed, if you've got May owed, if you've got April owed, and you put those late charges on there, you are just asking for trouble. We really recommend that you don't do it. I know some of you won't listen to me and you'll put late charges on there and maybe you'll get away with it. But if the judge starts looking at it and the judge sees excessive late charges because they've built up, you're just asking for a problem. Why ask for a problem? You've waited so long. It's such a mess as it is. I've never seen anything like it. This is the biggest mess I've ever dealt with in my entire life. The last 90 days is like an absolute blur. I can't even take it any longer. I just honestly feel like quitting. It's been that bad. And I'm not making any money either doing the evictions, because I can't file the evictions. So it's all it is. It's answering questions all day long. And you're under a lot of stress too, but you waited long enough. Why take a gamble? This is not the time to gamble. Gamble when times are good. When times are good, you could take a chance on your notice or whatever, but not right now. So be accurate about that. We are counting of the notice and looking for the holidays, legal holidays, because we got to July 1st. Can't forget about this. We have July 1st is when the eviction moratorium is supposed to be over, and then Then we've got 4th of July, and I don't know when the holiday. I got to look on the calendar, but we got 4th of July. So when you're doing your 3-day notice, don't forget. And I didn't even think about 4th of July until today. That's how detached I've been from everything, because I have done nothing but been here for the last 3 months. So we got that. So that's a legal holiday. Don't mess up your 3-day notice. So taking away late fees from your thinking is really going to help you out a lot. Now, after July, August comes along, you're going to start up acting normally. That's a different story. But for now, why bother? Don't do it. Pre-eviction checklist. Confirm that any repairs that have been requested are done. Some of your tenants have requested repairs, and then you tried to make the repairs. You sent your vendor out, you went out there, and what did the tenant do? Oh, you can't come in right now. You can't do this right now. I'm under quarantine, or I got immunodeficiency, or this or that. You can't come in. So you didn't make the repair. You said, all right, well, you let me know when you're ready. But they never did. So now in July, you go ahead and file an eviction, and they file this long answer with the court saying how you didn't fix the AC, you didn't fix the washer, the dryer, the this, that. All of a sudden, have you ever filed an eviction and they just throw the kitchen sink at you? Yeah. We don't want that to happen. And we got situations right now where people have requested repairs to be done. You've tried to do it, and they would not let you in. So we kind of have to check. Do we have is there anything floating around out there that's going to come and hit us in the back of our head in court if the tenant decides to fight? And, you know, people who take advantage of situations, they're going to do everything possible to try to keep this going. If I was living, if I paid rent and I got away for 2, 3, 4 months without paying rent, I'd be like, yeah, this is pretty darn good. I'm going to keep this going. Then what you're going to do, you're going to check and see if you've communicated. So part of your little checklist, confirm that repairs have been done. Have I communicated with my tenant? Have I confirmed that I've sought out that money and sent my tenant to any of the different organizations, county, city, whatever? Have I done that? Have I done my notice correctly? Have I shut off the electronic payment? A lot of you are taking electronic payments. They're paying through everybody does things differently. There's all different ways that you take payments. Electronic payments are awesome. They're great. But here's a little problem with them. You lose control over the payment. So you give a 3-day notice for $2,000, and you're getting ready to file the eviction, and you little did you know, 2 days before they slipped in $500. Now what? Now what? Do you give back the $500 and give a new 3-day notice? What do? You file an eviction using that 3-day notice, and the tenant comes to court and says, Judge, I paid $500 2 days before this eviction. You're going to lose that eviction. Good chance that you could lose it. So what you're going to do is make sure that you've got complete control over your electronic payment system. A lot of investors, they have direct deposit to the bank where you lose control. They have all these different payment methods that everybody's coming up with, and they lose control. If you want to file an eviction after your notice expires, shut off the ability to pay. Don't let them pay anymore. They can't pay anymore electronically. And this has messed up a lot of evictions. And before you do actually go to the courthouse and prepare that paperwork, if you're doing it yourself and go to and file it, you're going to back up and say, I just want to confirm that they didn't slip through any payments. Nothing slipped through the cracks. Then you're also going to ask yourself, did I try the agreement to vacate? Did I try the agreement to vacate before actually going before filing? Because that's the safe route, and it's something to think about. Now, during the eviction, as I mentioned, we expect more delays. We expect more hearings. We expect more money not being in the court registry. But an interesting thing happens at court. Many times we go to court, and the judge will go into court. We'll get there. The tenant will come in late. Tenants they like to come in late. So they come in late. So here you are. You did the right thing. You got there on time. The tenant comes in late. So you're sitting there waiting for the tenant. The tenant comes in, and there you are. So you have had no contact with this tenant for 2 months. And the judge sometimes will do this. The judge will look down and say, Mr. Heist, have you had any chance has your client had any chance to talk with the tenant? Has there been any communication? And most of the time, the answer is no. We haven't. We haven't been able to talk about the eviction. We're just here. And many times, know what the judge does? They say, why don't you do this? Go out in the hallway, come back in 15 minutes. So what do? We do what the judge says. We go out into the hallway. So there we are. We're kind of forced now into confronting each other. So the tenant, so we talk. And oftentimes I'll just say, so what's the scoop? Are you going to pay? You want to pay and stay? Are you leaving? What's going on? And sometimes the tenant will say, I just needed 3 more days. I just need 3 more. So you're like, I can move out this weekend. This happens all the time. So then I say, oh, okay. And so what do? I whip out a stipulation. I have 2 types of stipulations. One is a pay and stay. And the other one is a leave on a fixed date. So what I do is, now if the tenant's got the money, we'll do a pay and stay. But a lot of times they don't. And if they're in the hole really deep, they're not going to pay and stay. And these eviction moratoriums have actually hurt tenants because they got tenants deeper in the hole. They got them in the hole so deep, they're not going to be able to get out. These moratoriums cause more problems for these tenants, but that's a whole other issue. So here we go, we're in the hallway and the tenant says, I could be out on Saturday. I'll be out by Sunday. And we say, okay, we'll sign here. Then we bring it into the courtroom and we hand it to the judge. The judge signs it. Now that's not a payment plan. That's not an agreement to vacate. That's a court order. So if the tenant doesn't leave on Sunday, then on Monday, I file a paper with the court, and there we go. The eviction continues on. You know how many times that happens? When I'm in court or even before court, and you don't have to do this in court. You could do this before court. That's the incredible thing. You could call up your tenant or email your tenant and say, hey, look, what's going on? We got court scheduled for Friday. It's Monday. What are your plans? And oftentimes you could work things out. I go to court all the time and it's a waste of time. It could have been done before. And I had to get dressed up to go to court. I had to drive to court. I had to park my car. I had to get soaked in the rain. I had to sit there waiting for the tenant to be late to court when all this could have been taken care of 2 days before. So think about that. Don't waste your time in court. At least try, even after the case has been filed. Now, when you file an eviction case, most of you know the process. And today we're not going to talk about the process. I got all the videos and all about, most of you know how all that stuff works. But once you do file an eviction, is it too late? You could stop an eviction at any time. Like I said, in the hallway, you could do a stipulation of pay and stay or leave on a fixed date. You could do it before court. You could do it at the time the sheriff is at the door to do the writ of possession. Anytime you want, you could stop that darn thing. And a lot of you know what you do? You file an eviction and then you don't check your property. Turns out the tenant vacated a week prior. Keep an eye on your property. Most tenants do not stick it out to the bitter end. Be on top of that property. Now you can't harass the person, but at least check with them. And oftentimes this is another interesting thing that where I see you hurting yourself. You'll call me up and you'll say, Harry, I don't know if my tenant's gone or not. Sometimes this is before you even file an eviction. You're like, I don't know if they're there or if they're, have you ever had that situation? You're like, I don't know if they're gone. So you go there and you look in a window and you see some junk in there. You talk to a neighbor. The neighbor says they haven't seen them, but you're just not sure. You're not sure. So you try to contact the tenant. The tenant doesn't get back to you. When you contact the tenant and say, hey, look, could you tell me whether you're out? If you're out, I could stop this eviction. If you're out, I don't need to file an eviction. That's when you're going to get a response. And I've got a really cool video on how to do that. There's the little tips and tricks on how to get a tenant to respond to you because they don't want to respond to you. Why? Normally because they're embarrassed, they're angry, you're embarrassed, you're angry. Everybody's mad at each other. So the communication's broken down. And the key to success is communication. There are ways to avoid evictions, avoid court, get your property back quicker, not sit there like an idiot saying, oh, I don't know whether the tenant's out or not. And I'm sure some of you have been in that boat. They never return the keys. Of course they don't return the keys. Tenants don't return the keys all the time. So funny. It's like, well, I'm waiting for the tenant to return the keys. I'm like, how long are you going to wait? You're going to wait forever? A lot of tenants don't return the keys. They throw them in the sewer on the way out, or they leave them on a table. Sometimes they're sitting on the table for 2 weeks and you don't know. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of you have been through this before. I'm not talking to beginners right now. Now, what about other stuff? Non-renewals. Can you serve a notice of non-renewal right now? Absolutely. Can you serve a 7-day notice to cure and file an eviction for that kind of stuff right now? Absolutely. The governor's executive order that stopped evictions was for non-payment of rent. So you can do these other things. Just make sure that you've got a solid case. I've got a great video on how to serve your notice of non-renewal. Some of you you'll only do it one way, and then the tenant will say they didn't get it. I got a great video on that. Also, when you're doing your non-compliances, this is not the time to evict somebody for a dog that you didn't do anything about for the past 3 months. Some of you are like, well, I'm going to evict them for non-compliance. They haven't cut the lawn, or they have a car parked on the front lawn. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. So I'm going to evict them for non-compliance right now. They have unauthorized occupants. And then I ask the client all the time, so how long has the unauthorized occupant been there? Oh, they've probably been in there for 4 months. Oh, so now all of a sudden now you want to get them out. Judges don't like that. Judges see right through that. And they really know that the real reason is that the person hasn't paid the rent. And what does the moratorium protect? People who don't pay the rent. But you should be serving your 7-day notices to cure. You should be doing all this stuff right now. Whenever a tenant's in non-compliance, you serve your 7-day notice. Don't wait, don't delay, don't have a conversation with them. Don't send them a warning letter. Use your 7-day notices. Very, very important. So now you get a writ of possession. You're all at the end of the eviction. In July, we're going to have our writ of possessions are going to be off the hold right now. Right now, the Supreme Court's got the hold, and they just yesterday. If you want to follow stuff, if you want to get the most up to the minute stuff, go to my Facebook page, Heist, Weiss, and Wolk. That's the Facebook page. As soon as something hits, that's the very first place that I put it. And you're going to see on there, you'll see the Supreme Court administrative order that talks about the writ of possession. So you're going to be in good shape on July 1st. You're going to be in good shape for that. Now, something that you don't want to forget. Have you ever had this happen? The tenant owes you a ton of money, or they skip out on you, and you're holding a security deposit. This tenant has gotten you bad. And know what you do? You forget to send them out the notice of intention to impose claim on security deposit. You're thinking, they owe me 2 months rent. They destroyed this place. They're not getting their security deposit back. So you forget to send the darn notice out by certified mail. I deal with this a lot. There's no exception under the law for evictions. If you evict somebody, you got to send that notice out, get that notice out. There is a certain little exception for skips, but get the notice out. Don't ever forget to do your notice. It's the notice of intention to impose claim on deposit. You send it out by certified mail. You pay the money. Unfortunately, we can't do that by email. You got to do it. Don't forget. And it's easy to forget because they owe so much and they've ignored you for so long. Don't forget that thing. Some of you are reporting things to credit. Some of you will send things to collections right away. We're recommending that you just chill out on that right now. Hold off on that. Chances of you getting the money is slim to none. So just kind of hold before you send anything off to collections or you try to destroy somebody's credit. And if you know me, I am not a big proponent of trying to destroy somebody's credit, because if you destroy somebody's credit and 2-3 years later, they can prove that you were a little bit off in the amount that you charged, that 2-3 years later, you can't prove that the damage, or maybe you overcharged a little bit, or maybe you didn't prorate, and then you slandered their credit for 3 years. We've seen people get in trouble for slander of credit. I am not a big fan of destroying somebody's credit because you're angry. And I know how it feels. You want to get them. You want to get them. They got me. I'm going to get them for years. And they turn around, they get a lawyer, and 3 years from now, they get you, and they clean you out. See, these are the things a lot of people don't hear. Us lawyers, we hear the dirtiest of all the dirty things. That's what we hear. All day long, we hear this filth where these lawyers go after landlords for this kind of stuff. You don't see it until what? Until it happens to you. So either, you could wait till it happens to you, or you could trust me and do what I tell you to do. I don't care what you do. I have no interest whatsoever in your money. I have nothing to do with your investment. But I do know what could happen when you do certain things. And I do know that sometimes the risk reward, it's just not worth it. Now, CARES covered properties. All this information's on evict.com. This is where you need to spend some time. If you have determined that you are on a CARES covered property, for instance, maybe it's a unit that's Section 8. A common question I get, somebody will say, well, I have a duplex or a triplex, One unit is Section 8. Does that make it CARES covered? No. Only that unit's CARES covered as far as we know. If you have, you're gonna check if you're connected to the federal government in any way, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, and there's a number of other things. Of course, it's going to be covered under CARES. So you have determined, let's say that you dug deep, you did some research, and you determined you're covered under CARES. Now, for the really super bad news, your tenant is untouchable. Do not dare serve them a 3-day notice. Do not dare do it. Under the CARES Act, you can't do anything until after July 26th. And on July 26th, you still can't give them a 3-day notice. Does anybody know what you're supposed to give them on July 26th if they haven't paid the rent? A 30-day notice. Now, the CARES Act is targeted to non-payment of rent, just like the executive order, non-payment of rent. But you can't get, on July 26th, you can't give a 3-day, you have to give a 30-day. So you can't even file an eviction. If you're on a CARES covered property, you can't file an eviction for non-payment of rent until when? After August 25th. So if you have a CARES covered property and you've got a tenant not paying the rent, it would be wise to do everything within your power to get them out without having to wait that length of time. That's a really long time. So think about it. You can't file an eviction until August 25th or 26th. Then it takes another month from there. So now we're into September. I mean, how bad can it get? Will it be into October? Now, what about a non-compliance? The tenant, you're on a CARES covered property and there's a non-compliance. The lawn is 3 feet high, unauthorized occupants, drug activity going on, a big arrest at the property, drug bust at the property. You can't give a 7-day notice on a CARES covered property. You have to give a 30-day notice. Everything's turned upside down. If you're CARES, everything we talked about just before when it comes to evictions and notices, that was for non-CARES covered. But the minute you're CARES covered, everything's going to turn upside down on you. And the main thing is to just find out what it is. It's not complicated. It's just hard to, it's just kind of hard to comprehend that it's as bad as it really is. So those are basically the things that you're going to do. You're going to do everything you can to work at using those tools and techniques to avoid an eviction, and then using the checklist and your tools and techniques to set you up for the eviction in the event you actually have to go ahead and file. Because the key, there's two goals. Either get paid or get them out. Those are the two goals. That's it. So you want to either win, and winning is getting them out or getting your money. You want to win. You never want to lose. And as I said before, earlier today, you're under the microscope more than ever before. Attorneys are going to be watching. They're going to be looking. They're going to be representing tenants for free. They're offering right now legal aid. People go to legal aid. Legal aid says, I can't help you, but here's a list of attorneys. And they give out the list, and these attorneys will take these cases. They will put them under the microscope. They will find out little things that you might have done wrong, and then you could end up having to cut a check for $5,000 or have a judgment stick on your property for that kind of money. It happens. And if you don't believe me, if you want to see these cases, I could show them to you. These are real cases, real judgments, and they're really, really bad. Remember, the cost of an eviction is not just the filing fee, especially if you're doing your own case, you don't even need an attorney. The cost of the eviction is not just a filing fee or the service of process or the sheriff. What is the cost of an eviction? The cost of an eviction is an angry tenant who ends up damaging or destroying the property on the way out. Many, many times, tenants destroy properties on the way out of an eviction, whereas if you got them out some other way, they don't destroy the property. So you have to factor in that. Not only have you lost money, not only are you in the hole, but when you have that divorce, it's kind of like a divorce. You want to make it clean and easy and uncontested. What happens in a messy divorce? Everybody fights, and oftentimes one party really loses bad. So we don't want that. That's not what you want to do. You want to try to do it amicably and not end up having to take it all the way. Judges don't want to evict people. They don't get any joy out of that. And I will tell you this. I told you earlier when I first started, I've got clients who have hardly any delinquencies, hardly any evictions, hardly any problems. In fact, my best clients, the clients that I've worked, when I say best, They don't make me any money. The more educated they get, the less evictions they have. And after a while, to me, we do leases for them. We prepare a lot of leases for property managers, thousands of them. So I make money there. But as far as evictions go, if I had to rely on my good clients, when I say good, I mean the smart ones, if I had to rely on them for evictions, I would be broke. I rely on my not so smart clients for evictions. So you have to ask yourself, who are you? You know, what am I? Am I smart? Am I not so smart? And it's so easy to get smart when you have so many resources available to you. You got a great group. That's a great resource. I looked and saw all the great speakers that you have. That's awesome. You've got evicttv.com you could go to, evictforums.com, evict.com. And then I'm just going to throw this in. Many of you know about NARPM, the National Association of Residential Property Managers. Now, NARPM, to be a member, you have to have a real estate license. Some of you do have a real estate license, but some of you don't. That's okay. You still can attend events. So in addition to the great events that you're putting on there, you have a NARPM chapter here in Southwest Florida that's growing, and they're putting on events, and they're getting some of the top talent from around the country. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I don't know whether that's good or bad, more of this. But you know, this Zoom stuff, I know it's cool to be in a room and you network and you meet people and you make money doing that. But if you could get really high quality people easier, now that people are getting more used to Zoom, hey, maybe you're going to end up coming out farther ahead in the long run. Who knows? I have no idea. But I want to thank you all for having me. And if you have any questions, I could deal with them right now. And if a question pops in your head, you can email me at harry@evict.com. There's never a charge, and I'll see if I can help you, send you a forum notice, whatever. I got 30 years of content, and it's all free.
Harry, I have a question.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I ask a question here.
Sure.
Harry, if you look at me, I don't look the same as when you first met me 33 years ago. I've known you 33 years. Stu Silver.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Stu. I talk to your daughter all the time.
Yes. And
I don't look the same either.
Yeah, you do. You look pretty close. Do you ever mess around with emotional support animals and service animals?
All the time.
What's the story there?
All the time. Well, it's not a related topic. So, but I have one thing I could do is shoot out to anybody who wants. I'll throw this in the Dropbox folder for you. I have an article on ESAs and service animals. The majority of times they're fake. So we have that's a hurdle. A lot of people say, I have it. My tenant has an ESA, a service animal. And I'm like, well, how do you know? And that usually stops it right there because it turns out it's fake. But that's, you have to accept them. Some of you are under exclusions as investors, but generally speaking, you're not really as protected as an investor as you think. Most of you are covered under it, where you're going to have to follow it. But one company that's really good, petscreening.com. I don't know if you're familiar with that, petscreening.com. And what they do, they outsource it. It's complete outsourcing of the whole pet application process. And if the person has a service animal or claims to have a service animal or an ESA, they don't charge them. It's free to that person. And they will actually, they'll do the whole vetting process of finding out whether it's a scam, internet, fake ESA or service animal, or whether it's a real deal. But that's a big topic. I got an article though, and I've got a service animal addendum. If you do have a service animal or an ESA, you can't use your normal pet addendum, but we have a service animal addendum. Very similar, but it takes out certain things that could get you in trouble.
Awesome. Anyone else? Thank you, Stu and Harry.
Yeah, I have a question. So if you have a CARES covered property, you can evict for breach of lease or non-compliance as long as it's not non-payment. But then you said don't do it if it's been months and you are aware of it, because then you could get in trouble because they'll see it's just a ruse about trying to get it for non-payment.
Right. Not only is it a ruse, it's like that all the time. If you let any non-compliance go for months and months, and then you try to just hit somebody with it, that's always a problem. But here's the difference: if it's a CARES covered property, you can't give a 7-day notice. Normally you give
It's
a 7-day
30.
notice. You can't. You have to give a 30.
Okay.
Awesome.
I have an article on exactly that. It's non-compliances and non-renewals for CARES covered properties. It's right on the website.
So if they're on month to month, you can serve a non-renewal.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay. So
At
that's
least
the way.
30, but listen,
But 30 days.
at 30, not normally. Remember, the normal law for month to month is at least 15 days prior to the end of the month.
Okay.
Now it's 30. So it kind of turns everything upside down.
30 under CARES Act or 30?
Yeah, under
Okay.
CARES. Now, if it's not CARES, everything's going to be normal. Back when I say normal, it's still going to be messed up, but everything's going to be more normal. As far as the law goes, the law's all going to be the same on July 1st. Everything's going to be the same legally, but not for CARES.
Gotcha. You know, there's a question and there's a few that were posted, but I see one here. Are there any assistance programs for landlords for issues with tenants and rent payment? I'm not aware of anything like that. Any kind of offset for landlords, because we're looked at as the bad guys. So
I haven't seen anything yet
Yeah.
that actually is for landlords. I was just watching a video earlier today from some guy in New York, but I think that he was referring to the rental assistance programs. It also was implying that the landlord could get relief. I don't know. Maybe there will be, but I sure know that the money's out there for the tenants, but you gotta find it. It's there. I feel sorry for people who don't do that, because when it runs out, you're going to be mad that somebody beat you to that money.
Gotcha. Agreed. Anyone else? I know it's getting late. Harry, your information was fantastic. Anyone else have any questions? We appreciate.
Harry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Harry. I've got a client tenant where I inherited the client and their lease, and their lease was not a residential lease; it was a commercial lease,
Okay.
and it was for 24 months, with them having the option to renew again for another 24 months.
Ugh.
And I can't even do anything with the compliance issues, because there's nothing in the lease that really speaks to compliance for for this type of a house.
Yeah, well, that's a huge mess. I just dealt with one last week that's really similar. It was somebody used a commercial lease, and it was 2 years. This one was 2 years. So I don't know what to tell you. You'd have to look at the lease. Hey, Stu Silver's on this call. His daughter, Holly, she's an awesome attorney, and she handles a lot of the cases that I can't handle because they're too complicated. Holly Cosby handles the cases for me. So she'd be perfect. She takes the cases where you got to dive in. I take the easy cases.
That's great. Thank you. We'll make time if there is one more question, and then we'll close it for the evening. Anyone else have a question?
I have a statement.
Bring it.
I thought a landlord had the lowest opinion of human nature, but now that I've listened to Harry for an hour, I realized he's got us all beat.
It's crazy out there. Watch out for the testers. They're going to call you up, and they're going to make believe they're applicants, and they're going to say, do you accept people with felonies? And you're going to blurt out, oh yeah, as long as it's just no felonies within the last 7 years. And bang, you're going to get hit and I could show you what these letters look like. You're going to get hit, and it's not going to be pretty. They're going wild.
Let me ask you this, Harry, on that exact question. If it is can you put felonies that were non-violent felonies that you're convicted of, or just across the board, safe, not safe?
I'll put that in the Dropbox. I have the wording that is safe. You are required now under HUD to do individualized assessments. So when somebody calls you up, this is what you say. It's real simple. When somebody calls you up with their story, and they could be a tester, and they say, I've got a couple felonies. Do you accept felonies? This is what you say. You say, we will take all applications, and we will do an individualized. They'll say, do you take felonies? You say, yes, we may accept people with felonies, but we will do an individualized assessment of each situation. That's what you're supposed to say. Now, don't ask me how to do that without violating fair housing laws, but that's what you're supposed to say now. It's ridiculous. It's the government gone wild with not clarifying the law for us. And we're stuck with this crazy thing. But that's what you're going to say. You're going to say, just don't say no off the bat. That's where they're nailing you. If you say no, they got you.
Gotcha. Okay. Harry, we appreciate your time so very much and the resources you have. We definitely would love to have you back and discuss this more once we get a better idea of what's going on, once we're beyond all this. But thank you again for your time. Much appreciated. You did fantastic.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Everyone have a good evening. We appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.